Шановні колеги, шановні партнери,
Dear colleagues, partners, let's start our meeting. Hello and welcome in the meeting of the Technical Working Group on Mental Health and Psychosocial Support. Today we have the technical discussion format of our meeting. We will discuss mental health and psychosocial support services at unidentified loss. The format of such a discussion was started last year, and in such meetings we discuss different priority topics which are highlighted in the area of MHPSS response in Ukraine. And today we decided to stop on this relevant and important topic. We have a lot of speakers from the governmental sector and also from non-governmental sector. So we do hope that our meeting today will be fruitful and interesting. Let me share a few organizational points before we start related to how we have this meeting. We have simultaneous interpretation available. Feel free to choose English or Ukrainian. We have both of these languages working, and please introduce yourself in the chat. Write your name, last name, the organization you represent, and if you want the contact information so that we'd add you to the minutes of the meeting. Please do not use AI minutes taken and notes taken tools, since we run the minutes of the meeting from our side and we share that with you after the meeting. So thank you for your understanding. Let's start our meeting. The first speaker today is Valentyna, the head of the department of the Secretariat of persons lost. And thank you, Valentyna, for joining us today. And Valentyna, could you please tell us about the general response scheme and the state procedures and what are the gaps with unidentified loss and with missing people? Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. It was very interesting to get your invitation and to have this chance to communicate. It's really important for us. Let me introduce. I'm the head of the directorate, of the Commissioner of Missing People at Special Circumstances, Valentyna Akulenko. And since we have big repatriation, 1,000 bodies and controls their identification. Besides, let me tell you a little bit about our activity. The Commissioner supports, and we sent the request to our international partners. We already have experts, 4 international experts working in Ukraine. And as of today, yesterday, they worked on and there is joint work with our experts from the Ministry of Internal Affairs on the identification of difficult cases that we get in the field of the body parts that we get within repatriation. I want to thank our partners that they agreed to help following the request from our commissioner, because the families requested to engage international experts, although as of these days, our experts and the workers of the Ministry of Health, I mean, forensic experts, they do great job. They perform severe, not severe, but complex expertise, and there were no complaints from our international partners because we have full mutual understanding in this field, and they provide really important, significant support for us. in the area of reagents, in the field of experience exchange. So we want to thank our partners for that. Mr. Artur wanted to be present in this meeting, but we have what we have. So it's so good to be here in this meeting. And I'd like to say that mental health of the families of missing persons is the most complex and difficult condition that the person may have. And this is the state, institution, or some other people helping in this communication. But on the other hand, it's the families of missing persons. So the person who feels, the person who got this information, first of all, and then this condition of unidentified loss, when the person understands that something happened, I mean that the close person is physically absent, but at the same time, the person may not be able to get over this information and come to peace with it because there is no death confirmation, there is no possibility to have burial procedures, and there is no understanding, no finish of this process, this ongoing leverage between hope when we communicate. You know, people, they still want to have hope that their family member is alive, but at the same time, they understand what consequences may be there as a result. But these leverages, they are always balancing, and the person is, how to put it, the person freezes in this condition. So when we communicate from calm condition, the person may start being hysterical, or the opposite as well. The first persons who face that, I mean, who face this reaction of the family members and loved ones, they are the military service members, the co-workers of Territorial Center of Completation, when they come to the family member and inform that their family member is missing. But we can say that this is the second stage of this condition, because the first stage of this condition is when they do not get the feedback from their family member who is in the combat conditions. This is the first red flag for them that something happened. And then the next steps follow, I mean, communication with the governmental state institutions, and this ongoing expectation, anxious expectation, impacts mental health a lot. Anxious expectation is there due to the following reason, that families understand that something happened, but this hope that any person has, the hope for better results. At the same time, these emotions, I mean, sadness or the feeling of guilt for a person about what else could I do that I didn't do? What should I have done that I didn't do? What didn't I manage to do? Well, all of that has a strong impact in general on the understanding of the situation and on the condition of the person, because the person cannot sleep soundly, eat well, and calmly continue living, because the person is in this condition of uncertainty. The person cannot plan neither own day nor own life. In this condition, the person freezes simply, and it causes concern among all of us, because I'm not gonna open anyone's eyes saying that these people not just communicate with each other, they keep on working, they live in our society. So when, let's say, a wife with children is responsible for children, she freezes in this uncertainty condition, and children understand her condition as well. And she distances away from children. So children also become the participants of the mental condition of the mother. But it's not just about the mother. There is also grandmother, the mother of the missing person. There is mother, wife, sister, children, father of the missing person, brothers, sisters. All these people, they are in the uncertainty condition, in the expectation mode. And we do our best. We try to communicate with them to help them feel better. But if the person doesn't get psychological and in some cases psychiatric care, then this person gets isolated from the society. And probably it's very, very scary for our existence in the future when people just get locked up in themselves and do not go out and ask for help with their condition. When we communicate, we try to engage into our communication. When we can see that the person really needs support, we try to provide the information that this person needs support, and we share this information with the psychologists of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. The Ministry of Internal Affairs, they has the psychologists, dialogue psychologists, and they try to work with them. The centers of search of persons missing under special circumstances are open in each region of Ukraine, and over there they have psychologists working. So we try to provide care and support. People come to us with a problem, and we try to solve their problems the best way we can. But then again, professional psychologists are needed in this area because until 2022, Ukraine didn't have such definition as the condition of uncertainty, the unidentified loss, because we didn't face these situations and the wars like other countries did. So I will really appreciate your proposals and maybe work results which can help us somehow make communication with family members easier. And I will really appreciate if you offer us as specialists who directly communicate with the family members of missing persons, because for your understanding, the Commissioner on Missing Persons under Special Circumstances, Artur Dobroserdov, 3 times a week has personal meetings with the families of missing persons, twice a day, 3 times a week. On average, we have 6 meetings a week, and if people come with their pain, with their questions, then you can understand how big the load is, workload on the whole division, on the whole department. There aren't a lot of us here, but we all communicate, and there are our representatives in the regions. They also talk to family members. They even go to the remote villages and municipalities in the communities. And if there is a request to have such a meeting, we always try to respond and we go to meet with people. People don't need to come to Kiev if we can come to people in their remote locations. And that's what we do. Thank you for the invitation to be in this meeting. I will listen to all the speakers with interest, and I hope you will hear from us that this is the first time that Ukraine has this experience of war, loss, real loss, and unidentified loss. It's very difficult, but I think that we will cope with all the challenges we face these days in the country. Thank you. Thank you, Valentyna. Thank you for the overview and sharing your experience, how everything works. Your work is really important. We understand that there is huge workload on the management and everyone who is working on the cases. We hope that we will discuss what can be done today and how we can strengthen this system and how we can strengthen the system of response to different cases. So right now within our agenda, let's move on to our next speaker who will share some solutions and tools already available in Ukraine. And I'd like to give the floor to Anna Sokolenko. She's an expert of the Coordination Center for Mental Health of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. And she will tell us about the products and tools developed within All-Ukrainian mental health program named How Are You, initiated by the First Lady of Ukraine. Anna, thank you for being here with us. I know that you have a lot of business trips and your schedule is tight, but we really appreciate that you join us and share information with us. Over to you. Thank you. Hello, colleagues. I'll try to share the screen. Can you see it? Yes, we can see your presentation. Hello, Anna Sokolenko. I work in the Coordination Center for Mental Health of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine. I am the expert and project manager. It's difficult for me to speak after Valentyna. The information is very important and we hear a lot, but every single time it's quite painful to hear about that. My presentation is built to share the tools that are already available. And today we will speak a lot about what's missing in the support, psychological support to help families of missing persons. So today I'd like to share the products that can help both families and specialists working with the families to help them support mental health, recover as much as they can. I will tell you about our All-Ukrainian mental health program initiated by the First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska. Sorry, I started the wrong presentation. Sorry, just a second.
Дозвольте мені два слова сказати.
May I say just a few words?
У мене буде таке прохання,
I will have a
буде,
request if
ласка, таких спікерів, хто буде
such
виступати,
speakers
все ж таки, у нас є,
can,
скажімо так,
you
два
know,
стани,
we have two
які ми
conditions,
просимо вашої допомоги
and we ask
до,
you to help us to work
роз'яснити,
with
як
them,
краще
to clarify
спілкуватись
how we
з
can better
родинами в двох
communicate
випадках, да?
with families
Це
in
перший
two
випадок,
cases.
коли,
The first case
зникли
is
безвісті,
when
тобто
it's
стан
family members of
невизначеності.
missing
І другий
persons,
випадок,
the
коли
ambiguous,
іде
unidentified
вже
loss, and the
проведена
second case
ідентифікація
is
особи,
when
да,
the person
тіла
was
або стану.
identified. I
І
mean, the
ми
body
повинні
or body parts were
спілкуватись з
identified,
родиною
and
і
we have to
пояснити цю
communicate
ситуацію,
with
що
the
ваш
family
рідний
members
прийшов
and
в
explain
отбор
that
репатріації,
your
тіло є,
family
співпадіння
member
є, як таким чином,
we have
от
him or
зменшити
her
цей
within
психологічний, психічний
repatriation,
стан
and
людини,
we have the body. How
яка
can
буде
we
отримувати від
help
нас
the
цю
mental health
інформацію щодо
of the family members who will
ідентифікації
get
тіла?
this information
Тому
from us
що,
about
ми ж з вами розуміємо, що
identification
в
of the body? We
більшості це не
understand that in
тіло,
most cases,
а
it's
останки.
not the full
Це
body, it's
дуже
body
важко
parts that
пояснювати
we get.
родині, і родина
And it's
практично
very difficult to
не
explain that
сприймає
to the
цю
family,
інформацію,
and
це
the
дуже
family doesn't
складно.
perceive
Але
that
от від
information.
вас
It's
хочу
very
такий,
difficult.
якийсь
But
фідбек
could
отримати,
you
якщо
share
можна. Дякую вам,
feedback
вибачте.
about it,
Дякую,
if
пані
that's
Валентино. Я
possible,
думаю,
if you may?
що
Thank you,
конкретно такі
Valentyna.
речі вам розкажуть,
I
допоможуть,
think
підкажуть
that
фахівці, тому що
specialists will help you
сьогодні
with
ВООЗ
specific
запросило
tools because
величезну
today
кількість
the
практичних психологів,
WHO
які працюють в полях, то я сподіваюся,
invited
після
a lot
моєї
of
доповіді
psychologists,
будуть
practitioners
набагато
working in the
відповідей на ці
field.
ваші
So I
важкі
hope that
питання.
after my
Добре?
speech,
Я трошки
there will be a
розкажу,
lot of answers
перепрошую за
to your
технічний
complex
збій.
questions.
Одразу декілька
Sorry for
графіків
the
до моєї
technical problems. I
презентації.
have a few
Я
events, so that's
підготувала
why a
таку
few different
презентацію.
presentations. Can you see the slides changing?
що ні.
No.
Є,
Yes.
вітається.
Yes.
Дивіться, перше,
So you see, the first product that can be used, I will try to be brief.
Це наша
This is our
сторінка ТИЯК, яка перейшла
How
в
Are
сучасну
You webpage.
онлайн-платформу.
That is
Хайло.com.
the
Я думаю, ви багато її
modern
бачили,
online
знаєте,
platform
і сподіваюся, ви
named
використовуєте.
howareyou.com.
Чому
I
сьогодні
hope
я
you
вам
know
показую,
about
тому
it
що
and
тут
you
є
use it. Why I show it to you today? Because it has self-help techniques, and also you see there is a check mark, online and offline support of different types. For example, I've chosen our partners working with the families of missing persons. For example, there is psychosocial support service for the families of military service members, Жіноча сила України, but they also take into the group the family members of missing persons, and that is a very supportive tool. Please feel free to contact them. I will not name all the partners. It's just an example. All the partners are verified and all the services are free of charge, and the trusted specialists on mental health work there. So what new do we have and what did we face? That communities do not have services available in the communities. So we've developed in the test mode the How Are You portal. Over there are 2,200 mappings in each community. So you can open it, choose the region, choose community and direction. For example, children have the neutral direction of work, and you will see the services in each community. For example, children. Likewise, you can choose veterans and their families, depending on your request. It's working in the test mode, but we actively put information there, and I hope it'll be a powerful tool to find the nearest service like support groups, to find a psychologist, to find different NGOs to help your close ones or to get help. Besides, Oblast military administrations, they monthly update the relevance of this information, so I hope that we will be able to use this tool to maximum in the future. So what do we have both in the digital and hard copy format where we can find the resources for those you want to help? There are guidebooks for now in 132 communities. Late October, there will be 220 communities with pathways in healthcare, sports, veteran policy, education, public sector, and so on. All of that will be posted on the official websites of the Oblast communities. Also, we understand that the preparation, very often when they say that I need to talk to a person who has experience in this field, We have a project, it's a pilot project, peer-to-peer, and it's as a project preparing the peer-to-peer specialists as the facilitators of support group. Together with Ukrainian Catholic University, we've developed the certified program, which is being heard in the special scientific council, and the training will be in October. The first group is the women who lost their husbands, and then they will work in the resilience centers of the Ministry of Social Policy. And after piloting, we plan to scale up this approach to cover the whole country. But what is it that we've already managed to pilot? Later, I'll tell you about peer-to-peer approach in general, but the representatives of the veteran community from 16 regions under Taras Shevchenko Kyiv University, they get the trained on certified peer-to-peer program developed together with the US California University in San Diego, and the first group will finish training October 11, and we want to include peer-to-peer specialists to be included in the profession classifier. It is critically important because the resilience centers, rehabilitation centers, this way they will be able to officially employ such peer-to-peer specialists. We are creating the professional standard because peer-to-peer specialists is not just about the joint experience, it's about competencies and skills which help work safely with own experience and experience of other people. And maybe psychologists will correct me, but the most important thing is not to do harm or re-traumatize yourself or others. So what is the new direction of work that we have? The foundation of Katerina Osacha contacted us. You know that they work on the missing civilians. We've signed the memorandum of understanding, and we plan, as previous speakers mentioned, the importance to support mental health of the families of missing persons based on so that we'd be able to create products for these target groups, run researches, and run information campaigns. So we're going to cooperate with the families of missing service members and support the military units and territorial completion centers, because they inform the family members that their family member is missing. So we communicate with the Ministry of Defense to do that. Right now, we provide trainings to the Ministry of Internal Affairs on the topic of persons who have been through captivity and tortures, but then we will continue working in the field of missing persons. I'm about to finish. Sorry for taking a lot of your time. So for mental health specialists within our program, we've implemented a training project. It's the cycle of online webinars. I've prepared the link that you can use to see more information. All these videos are already on YouTube. We had webinars on the topic of ambiguous loss, unidentified loss, and they were very popular among people. In 1 week, there were more than 60,000 views because this topic is not discussed. People don't know how to talk about it. So please feel free to learn more about it on our platforms. And we always create webinar cycles upon requests and invite not just Ukrainian specialists, but also international specialists. And you can hear a lot of information there, helpful information. And in general, we post everything right away, and feel free to use our information resources. Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you so much for this informative big overview. A lot of work is done specifically for such cases, and in general, a lot of work is done that's helpful and useful. I know that on your website you have a lot of publications on the topic of ambiguous loss. A lot of information can be found, but do you work on the management of these cases, to build the interagency cooperation in the area of ambiguous loss and missing persons? Do you plan to do that?
Дякую, Катю, за запитання.
Thank you, Katerina, for this question.
Ми, знаєте, як такий потік інформації
We
всього, ми
have
працюємо із запитами
big
до нас,
flow of
так?
information and
І
we
от
work
до
with the
нас
requests which we get.
запит,
There was a
сформульований.
request.
От дуже дякуємо МВС,
Thank you
дуже
so
активне
much to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. They have very proactive
І
management,
вони просили цих
and they
навчань,
asked
ми в
to
партнерстві
develop
там з
the
нашими
training
іншими
cycle,
партнерами,
and
і зарубіжними,
together with
в тому
other
числі,
partners, national
ми
and
проводимо цикл
international
навчань.
partners,
Там у нас
we
уже
run
розписаний
the
листок
cycle of trainings
для
for
лікарів,
doctors,
для психологів,
psychologists,
для середнього і молодшого медичного
both
персоналу
for a mid-level
стаціонарних
and
закладів
junior
МВС.
level
Ми працюємо, там у нас
workers of
фахівці
the
вчені і
Ministry of
по
Internal
КУ,
Affairs, the
вчені,
specialists of Bluebird
я не згадаю
work
правильно
there.
назви,
I will not
за
remember the other
товариство проти
organization,
тортури
but
в
it is
Данії,
the
убивства, да.
Community
Вони
Against
проводять такі
Tortures
цикли
in
навчань
Denmark.
саме
They
про
run these cycles of
комунікацію,
training
як
on
я
how
згадувала,
to
звільненими з
communicate
полону і тими,
with
що зазнали тортур. Так
persons
само у
freed
нас є
from
цикл за їх
captivity
запитом,
and those who underwent tortures,
лекцій і
and we also have a
воркшопів
request
по
from them to
роботі з
provide
родинами зниклих
lectures
безвісти.
and
Тому
workshops on
я
how
думаю,
to
що
work
ми цей досвід
with the
будемо
family members of
розповсюджувати. Дуже
missing
хочу,
persons.
щоб
We will share
ми
this
розуміли,
experience.
що
We
більшість
understand
зниклих
that
безвісти все ж
most
таки
missing
це
persons
система Міноборони.
is
Тому я
the
сподіваюся,
area
що
of
ми
responsibility of the
налагодимо
Ministry of
комунікацію,
Defense.
щоб ми
So
так само
I hope we will have good
проводили
communication with them so
навчання
that we would
для
run the
них.
trainings
Тому що
for them as
введення
well.
випадків
Because,
це більше
case
буде
management
до
is
рівня
more
громад все
about
ж таки.
the
І тому я тут
community
акцент
level.
зробила в
That's why I
презентації, що
emphasized
от
on
місця,
it in
куди
the
звернутися, щоб
presentation.
знати, де
So
є
you
фахівці.
need to know
Тому
where
якщо
the
ви не знаєте,
specialists
де
are
це
available.
в
If you cannot
працівниках,
find
не
yourself
знаєте,
in
де
the
себе
guidebooks, if you cannot find your
порталі, але він
organization
працює в
on the
тестово
portal,
режимі,
for
то
now
можна
it works in
звертатися
the
до
test
наших
mode. Feel
регіональних
free to contact
координаторів
our
ОВСД.
regional
Вони
coordinators
зафіксують,
in
що
the
ви
regions,
працюєте
and
з
they
родинами
will
зниклих безвісти,
note
і
that
цю
you work
інформацію
with the
поширять
family
назад,
members
щоб
of missing
вона була
persons, and this
доступною для
information will be shared
більшого
so
залу,
that
тому що
anyone would
інформація
have
розміщується
access
на
to it,
порталах
because this
ОТГ,
information is
ОВА,
posted on
і
the
розповсюджується в мові
portals of
серед
oblast
центрів
military
життєстійкості,
administrations,
серед
communities, among resilience
реабілітаційних
centers,
установ,
rehabilitation
там просторах, в бібліотеках
facilities,
будемо поширювати
libraries,
різні нагоди,
everywhere.
не
We
тільки
share
це
in the
можливо,
centers of
не тільки це
administrative
необхідно.
services,
Тому ми
even in
раді
the places where
продовжити
it's not that
співпраці.
obvious. So we are
Будь
always
ласка,
happy to
звертайтеся.
cooperate with you. Feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Пані Анна. Не бачу зараз
Thank you,
поки що
Anna.
питань від
I see no
колег.
questions from colleagues for now, so thank you so much for joining us and sharing this information. Of course, we will share the presentation with colleagues so that colleagues would have a chance to use that information and save what they find important. And let's keep moving to the next point in our agenda. Let's shift from the perspective, from the political and strategic perspective to more clinical perspective. And in general, let's look at how we can manage the cases of ambiguous loss. Let's speak about the general framework of this problem related to best practices, related to what works the best. That's why I'd like to give the floor to Liudmyla. She represents International Red Cross Committee. As you remember, last year, we prioritized this topic a lot, and we had the series of trainings about ambiguous laws together with ICRC, and Liudmyla was a trainer in many events like that. So Liudmyla, it's so good to have you with us. The floor is yours to share the approaches to work with the cases of ambiguous loss. Thank you so much for the invitation. Hello, everyone. I will try to share my presentation right now so that my speech would be more structured. Yes, the topic of ambiguous loss is still very relevant, and I always say unfortunately, with it, because this is something that we continue facing, and we can see that unfortunately the number of missing persons goes up. So people continue being missing in the times of the conflict that we have in our Ukraine. So according to that, the need is getting bigger. I will share what we do as ICRC. Thank you so much, Katerina, for the introduction. So I will not need to do that. I'm a psychologist. I represent ICRC. We met earlier in previous trainings. I will try to test if you can see that my slides change. Yes. I want to thank the previous speakers that you've already brought up the topic. You shared about the challenges and psychological difficulties that families face, what we have in Ukraine. And of course, this topic is still relevant because the system of services itself is still not that developed. And of course, before 2014, we didn't face this topic a lot. And in 2022, when the conflict got way bigger, the request got bigger, and we faced a lot of issues. Families face a lot of different problems, and they have a lot of different needs. As ICRC, we have a special department that works on the protection of family contacts. Colleagues communicate with families, register their applications to search the family member, and they have the biggest access to the families. They communicate with them directly. Valentyna will confirm that. You know that you often cooperate with colleagues. But as the Department of Mental Health and Psychosocial Support, we do our absolute best to ensure the necessary support for the families of missing persons, because they have psychological needs and they often contact us, and we often hear from our colleagues about these requests. ICRC very often in communication with families runs so-called needs assessment about challenges families face. Now you can see it on the slide: emotional, psychological needs that we talk about today, economic, financial, family needs, those needs that are both on social, individual level, administrative, legal needs, religious, cultural needs. I mean, every family is unique, of course, and since the missing of the close person leads to the disruption of contacts and connections, based on that, there are a lot of challenges and needs. It goes without saying that it impacts mental health of the person. It's not easy to solve this situation in one time and everything will be behind us. It's about the search of information, and this process may take 1, 2, 3 years, sometimes even more than that. And that's the most difficult thing for families. According to that, we identify the consequences of uncertainty, because of course we can say the word loss, but it's not always the loss, because the families themselves are not ready to hear this word, and a lot depends on how long the person is searching for the missing person. You can see that the problems may be on the personal level. That is something that Valentyna said. It's guilt, anger, no knowledge about the life of the close person. It leads to a lot of emotional conditions. On the family level, there are a lot of difficulties oftentimes related to contacting relatives, especially if it's about the fact that the family lost the provider for the family. There are a lot of external, internal issues about roles and responsibilities, and thus on the social level, community level, the family usually gets isolated. They don't really want to open up and speak about their issues. It's important for them not to be forgotten, to be remembered. I think we also know that it's important to provide them with the ongoing support. And of course, the families of missing persons need to know that they are remembered and they try to others try to help them to find this clarity. As ICRC, we have our own approaches to help these families. We cooperate with the Department of Family Protection. We provide support on basic level, and on the third level of our MHPSS pyramid. On the basic level, it's about information sessions or awareness-raising sessions that we run in cooperation with colleagues. We provide psychoeducational sessions where we share general information, normalization. In these meetings, we have a chance to tell them what psychologists can provide and what are the services, and we invite to participate in the support groups. You can see that they are already here. I remember that when we met in the trainings, we said that we want to develop this area, but right now we're already doing that. So in the support groups that our psychologists conduct, people have a chance to get not just the basic information on ambiguous loss, on how to live with uncertainty. They also have a chance to learn some skills, because this is the third level, and it's not just about some basic skills, but it's also about psychotherapeutic techniques like the skills of problem management, work with values, how to regulate emotions and thoughts. Of course, our approach is based on the theory of ambiguous loss, but Pauline Boss, she is the founder of this theory, and given the conflict in Ukraine with Russia, it's too early to say that it's lost, because there are a lot of cases, new cases, and the conflict still continues, and there are cases where the family member comes back. Very often the family member could be the prisoner of war, or some information is found. So the process is very dynamic, and the basic approach provided by Pauline Boss partially works for us, but we face the situations that families need more, because they need to get the skills here and now how to cope with this uncertainty, because it leads to a lot of problems and challenges mentioned earlier. I will not tell you about what is here on the slide in detail, but let me say a bit more about support groups. As Pauline Boss, the first founder, and out of our experience, we can say that the support groups work the best, because first of all, families feel isolated. They may not feel heard or understood. So it's important for them to stay in touch with each other and to be accepted by the community, by the society. So in our groups, first of all, we give a chance to families to share their experience, to be next to each other, and to gain new skills as well, gain new strategies on how they can cope with their psychological condition. Here you can see the content of our sessions. Of course, these topics are general. Some of you know them. It's problem management skills, talks about emotions and thoughts, about some strategies to cope with difficulties, about values, support network, family roles. I mean, these are the general topics which families face. First of all, our groups, they are absolutely diverse. Very often it's about what people are there. Since we are present in different regions of Ukraine, in particular Dnipro, Kharkiv, Kyiv, Lviv, and Odessa, thus we have a chance to have the groups in these regions. Very often families are participating in person, offline, and we emphasize that as well. And in these groups, we get the results that we expect. I mean, the support network is created for the families. They unite, they create associations. Some of them get motivated and they start creating other initiatives, actions, meetings, so they become more proactive. Of course, it's about the reduction of psychological stress and the negative impact, which is the result of uncertainty. We cannot say that we can overcome uncertainty, but we can say we can help cope with that. We can help live with uncertainty. Of course, it's about the improvement of daily functioning. That is something that we need as psychologists when we start working with people. We want people to feel that their lives improve and that they can keep going forward. And according to that, I cannot say that it's very often, but sometimes when it's needed, we refer the person to other specialists thanks to the very well-balanced system, which includes the resilience centers, which are in many places, and the cooperation with family doctors or GPs and psychiatrists. All of that gives a chance to provide access for our families to the psychological aid. So we do not provide psychological aid, but we can refer the person. So we can speak about the support groups forever, but we have limited time, and I'd like to share this great picture. Recently, we had a group in Lviv region, in the small city of Zhadachev, and in the groups, the families by themselves, they didn't communicate with each other, but we managed to get them together. We had meetings, they communicated and shared experience, and these families decided to create the association of the families of missing persons. They contacted on their community, and they created this tree of hope, and they put the identifying metal coins of their missing family members. And thanks to these support groups, they united, and it's a great result of our work. And of course, we have challenges. The conflict itself that we have between Russia and Ukraine is a difficult one. And we can see that everything is connected politically, and in our groups we can see that the news about the return of relatives from captivity impact mental health. Recently, early summer, in spring, we had big scales, big number of bodies that Ukraine received. So there was a process of identification. It's difficult, it's a potential challenge. And the families, they are as if on these emotional swings. On the one hand, they are more or less regulated. They learned how to live with this uncertainty, but on the other hand, this dynamics may cause challenges. We cannot say that it's simply because of the ambiguous loss, because it may not be a loss. And as a result of that, they are in this condition. Sometimes they have uplifted hope, sometimes despair. So they are in the condition of both. Maybe the person is missing, maybe the person is alive, and at the same time, they may feel better and worse at the same time. That's what we focus our attention on, working with the families. It helps cope with the situation of uncertainty. So the context itself creates challenges. There is also stigma as well. We also face very often that people don't want to talk to a psychologist. Colleagues will confirm that, and we are already progressing because more and more people contact psychologists, but stigma is there. And also, these families are everywhere, unfortunately, because the number of missing persons is big. So very often it may be the remote villages, and it's difficult for them to get somewhere and for us to get to them. Very often the mother is of the elderly age, or even the wife, they have no chance to join online. We have these challenges, we try to overcome them, and if we can, of course, we go to their location and provide support groups. And of course, we can see that there are a lot of specialists providing trainings, there are a lot of requests, a lot of information on this topic of the families of missing persons. A lot of videos are watched, but anyway, a lot of specialists are not ready to work with this topic. It's my subjective opinion, but I think that we have our own stigma on working with this topic, and here the peer-to-peer support works well as well. Very often when we can see that some leading associations, they are willing to support others, then we also provide the support, we provide additional information and maybe additional training. And then in the groups, the heads of the associations of families of missing persons or community leaders can lead the groups. Feel free to contact this phone number if you know someone who needs psychological support or wants to join the support groups, because we emphasize support groups. Feel free to give this phone number of our contact center, and if necessary, our colleagues will refer them to the psychologists. I hope that I didn't go over time, so feel free to ask questions. Thank you, Liudmyla. Thank you for this informative big overview. I wanted to ask you, I don't see any questions from colleagues, but if there are some questions, feel free to ask them and raise your virtual hand. What is the approach? In Ukraine, unfortunately, we have a lot of cases of missing persons and a lot of cases of ambiguous loss. Is it considered that all the service providers have to be trained on some aspects of work? Everyone has to take the training, or only specialists on mental health and psychosocial support? In our technical working group, we get a lot of requests from educators, teachers, volunteers. I mean, the audience is really big requesting such trainings. So what do you think? What is the technical opinion about it? Actually, we also often face a lot of requests, especially on how to communicate with children, relatives. Communication differs with those, for example, who know that the relative is the prisoner of war, or it differs from families who know nothing about the missing person. So if there is a request, it's important to meet that, but it's not us who have to decide it. It should be decided on the national level, but for sure it's the priority these days. Then again, the scale, unfortunately, is big. Thank you so much for your answer. And thank you so much for the time that you took to be in this meeting. I hope colleagues learned a lot of new information, because this topic is the topic where ICRC has big expertise and experience. So congrats on starting the support groups that you managed to launch them, because it seems like it's a very important direction of work. So we encourage colleagues to contact ICRC if needed. And now to showcase the practical application of some points that we mentioned and heard from Liudmyla, I'd like to give the floor to our Scalable Psychological Interventions group. Hanna, the head of it, will share with us how one of the interventions work and how it can be applied in the context of ambiguous loss, because we already have this experience, and this is the reason why we added this topic into our discussion today, because we have this experience, we have the data about it. So, Hanna, over to you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you that the task team showed this initiative to offer this topic for a discussion, because it's important. It's so important to see that what we offer and implement in Ukraine, that it's applied, related to the relevant problems. Thank you, Katarina. And I want to greet all the participants of the meeting. The topic of ambiguous loss is of big scale. Probably there is no person in Ukraine who, one way or another, directly or indirectly, who hasn't faced this problem. Unfortunately, we have the situation that even if we don't have the missing family member, we have friends or people we know, maybe some security people in our houses who have their family members missing. You know, for us, it's very unusual. It happened in the way that implementing and training specialists on scalable interventions, we faced the situation that within our training, we get the feedback for this period of time, for these 4 months from the specialists about from the supervisions, and we have a few dozen of cases of ambiguous loss. So for ourselves, we didn't even have this task. As the WHO, in cooperation with the Coordination Center, we tried to have the WHO tools which are evidence-based, and we tried to have them accessible for as many specialists as possible. That's why when I heard the topic of ambiguous loss, we understood that we have a lot of diverse cases. I will not share everything today. I will share just a part of them, but I simply wanted to show you how simple tools can help people who continue living in uncertainty. Let me remind you that scalable interventions are transdiagnostic. It doesn't matter what disorder the person has. So we work with the emotional and practical problems of people. I mean, we work with the symptoms. And if we speak about one of the interventions right now, it's available only in the individual format of PM Plus, Problem Management Plus, but we are going to finish and adapt the package of PM Plus for groups, and we understand that there is some specifics in PM Plus for groups, and the Group Problem Management Plus course and our experts think, and we think that it could be adapted for different groups of people. Let's quickly say about what is Problem Management Plus, PM Plus. What is this intervention about? This intervention works only with adults who have symptoms of stress, depression, and anxiety, and not PTSD. The criteria of inclusion is high level of distress and disruption of functioning. It's consultation on problem solving, behavioral strategies on stress management, behavioral activation, and strengthening social support. It's 5 individual meetings, but there are additional ones, pre-assessment and post-assessment, to understand if this intervention helped or we need to refer the person to a specialized support point. So we discussed all these emotional symptoms. One way or another, we spoke about emotional symptoms. We spoke about most cognitive symptoms, physical symptoms, functional, behavioral. I mean, you will have this presentation. I don't want to dive deep into it, but if you look through this presentation, the person who has the experience of working with families of missing persons, you heard about these symptoms and you saw these symptoms in the families of missing persons. The structure of PM Plus programs is very simple because it's CBT-based program. It has 5 weekly meetings, which last not 60 minutes, but 90 minutes. And as I said, there is pre-program, inter-sessional program, and post-program assessment. And we follow this program protocol, and we work with the problems that client talks about. And usually these problems are unique. So what are the strategies? Of course, it's stress management. I mean, it's the strategies that are put on top of each other, like, you know, beads on the thread. then the strategy of problem management, and then the strategy start and continue, and the strategy of strengthening social support. As Liudmyla from ICRC said, it's important to understand that we cannot solve the problem. We cannot find a person. We're psychologists. We do not do that, or we're the mental health specialists. But our task is to help the person continue living. So if we speak about the ambiguous loss in general, it's more of a social problem, going back to the very beginning. And here we speak about supporting the person with like self-help, when the person needs to understand how to continue living, when the person has a lot of problems, symptoms, which we mentioned earlier. So it's important to train the person on different strategies. Thank you for muting yourself, Liudmyla. So it's important to train and help the person continue living. So then again, it's not about solving the problems, it's about providing tools. Now you can see the feedback from the clients. Right now we speak about the clients of missing, whose family members are missing. The comment earlier, I was just lying in bed and thinking that it's getting worse and worse, and now I have something to do, and it saves. Every problem consists of smaller ones, and every decision has its steps. Thank you, I heard myself, it was helpful, it wasn't just talks. One more feedback, I couldn't feel happiness, and when I found this site, I bought the tickets to Philharmonia and felt that I want to do that and have energy. I had no confidence about myself, but the work in these few sessions gave me the feeling that I can do something and change something. I have some times when I feel sad, especially when I remember about my husband, but now thanks to the gained skills, I can easier stabilize and calm myself down. I do not fall into the dark pit as earlier. Also, I wanted to share a clinical aspect more. One story of life. This is the story of the wife of the military service member. She has a 10-year-old child and her husband is missing. So for more than a year, the wife has no contact with her husband. He is considered to be missing, and she has bad mood and apathy and ongoing anxiety about possible negative events. And a lot of other problems follow. As Liudmyla said, the families of missing persons, they don't just face psychological problems. They face a lot of problems, social, economic, family relationships problems. So it impacts all the areas of life. As a result of the war, she had to go back to her parents' home. And when she lived with her mother, she had a lot of conflicts. And more, she noticed that others do not understand her. And of course, as it often happens, the person isolates in such cases, and the negative worries of the client impacted her daughter, and lately the daughter became less successful at school. So the woman very often criticizes herself, saying that she's a bad mother, that she doesn't cope with her parenting responsibilities, and she has no energy to help her daughter with homework. She's irritated and she snaps at her child. That is something that the client stated herself. As a result, what is it that we get? In the process of consultation and at the end of PM+, when we had the final assessment on week 7, after we worked within individual PM+ program. So she learned breathing skills, techniques that helped reduce the intensity of somatic pain and background anxiety despite the absence of changes in the situation itself. Unfortunately, she didn't get any new information about the status of her husband. Still, there was a positive trend in her emotional condition and social activities. So she activated her social contacts. She started talking to her friends and husband's relatives. She showed initiative, trying to find information, providing legal and psychosocial support to the families of missing persons. She improved her relationships with the daughter, spending more time together. They walked together, spent more time together. She initiated the search of child psychologists to help her daughter. She started paying more attention to her needs, including some classes and activities which made her feel happy and resourceful. Also, she said that she feels more control over her emotional condition and increased level of initiatives, and she is more active in her daily life. I think that any case can be very similar to this case because, especially from the very beginning, when the families get isolated from others, when sometimes they are not even trying to find, they don't know where to get the support from others, then in this case, PM Plus may be the program that can start the process of finding help. Of course, I'd like to highlight that PM Plus cannot solve all the problems. About PM Plus and in general about scalable interventions, because there are so many of them, I'd like to say that we have self-help plus, doing what matters in times of stress, individual and group PM plus, is child intervention, IPT, interpersonal therapy, and gradually they become accessible and they will be adapted one way or another to Ukrainian context, or they are being adapted right now, and we will inform you about it in our task team meetings. So why? Because they are trans diagnostics, and we also communicated with experts, our global colleagues from the headquarters. We know that global program doing what matters in times of stress, in some projects it is used to help families of missing persons. I mean, it's not the only tool. And of course, as a specialist of mental health, I'd like to highlight that the foundation of help provision is the concept of ambiguous loss of Pauline Boss, and the intervention cannot be the only source of support. But in our Ukrainian context, one way or another, from 2014, we don't have so many evidence-based tools. I mean, programs that you don't need to come up with. The programs which are already there, they have protocols and they can be used in the peer-to-peer approach as well. So it's just one of the tools that is available that I wanted to share with you today. Of course, we're trying to integrate these interventions in the resilience centers. There are more and more of them, and the task is to have the resilience center in each community. So it's important to know where to refer such people. Then again, we will contact ICRC in this case, because the most important thing is the understanding of ambiguous loss and how to work with it. So thank you so much for your webinars, for your videos available in recording, and the offline trainings which help specialists understand how to work. Because there are so many questions and issues that we get in the trainings, because then there are supervisions and our supervisees, they bring up this topic of ambiguous laws and ask what to do about it. So we understand that most specialists have no access to quality supervisory support where people know how to work with such cases, because it's important to understand that if you can work with grief, it doesn't mean that you can work with ambiguous loss. So it's important to highlight that. Feel free to ask questions. That's it from me. Thank you. I'll be glad to hear your comments, or feel free to email me. Maybe you have no questions right now or comments, but if you have them later, feel free to email me. And please join our meetings of our task team. And we also invite partners who are interested in scaling up these interventions in Ukraine. Thank you, Katarina. Thank you so much, Hanna. Thank you for sharing these cases. Could you please tell us, you said that in the trainings themselves, there is this question from time to time, the participants bring it up. So please tell us, is this integrated in trainings? Maybe do you have some like instructions for trainers how to answer these questions? So what, in case these trainings are not focused on this topic, how do you answer this question? You see, that's, as I said, what we had. It was very spontaneous. We planned to train the trainers on interventions, on how to train PM+, but we understood that, for example, if we speak about the WHO trainers that we engage, they know what to do in this case. But when we trained the trainers during the supervisions gradually, I cannot tell you that we fully cover the request. Probably our last group supervisory meeting of the trainer community discussed this question, discussed what to do. They said, like, we also have such cases like you do. So in this case, we answered with very basic information, because in this case, we could only recommend to watch the webinar that is recorded of Paul Boss, and there is a book available in Ukrainian. But then again, we separate ourselves and our responsibility, because the program's task is not to work with ambiguous loss. So about it, we say that you need to get additional knowledge. We can recommend you to study something else, but we cannot give you the full concept on how to work with ambiguous loss. So if you agree with me, Liudmyla, it takes at least 2 days, sometimes even longer. It's about cases, it's about different situations, so it's a long process, but we can only refer the person, because we cannot solve all the problems in our training. Thank you so much, Hanna, for sufficient and full answer. This is a very important question. So, of course, we want as many stakeholders, training providers, and during the trainings on psychological interventions, we want more specialists to pay attention to this problem, and we want them to understand that it's the problem that a lot of service providers face in daily practice. This is the topic that unfortunately we can't avoid, and we have to be prepared and ready to somehow respond to this topic, not to have this, reaction when we freeze, so that we would provide specialized support. Liudmyla raised her hand, and then I can see a question from Rebecca about scalable interventions. So Liudmyla, over to you, then we will move on to the question. I'll be brief. I'd like to say that this is a really important topic about trainings, you know. Last year we had a lot of trainings, and recently in the chats which we created in the groups, like their colleagues asked who works with the families of missing persons, and only 2 persons answered. And it was very difficult and strange for us because we trained a lot of people. And yes, Hanna, I know that people bring up these questions. We often meet with the representatives of the resilience centers. We know that they were trained, that they are qualified. That's great. It's really comfortable to work with them, and we understand that people know what they work with and how to do that. But the topic of ambiguous laws, this situation is difficult. It requires support, supervisions. So right now, when we train someone, we train only those who are ready to work. So we hold each other's hands in these trainings and supervisions. In our groups, we often have some exercises which overlap with self-help plus stress management techniques. So then again, it's all about communication and communicating with each other. Somehow we can find a way to meet this need and solve this problem that we unfortunately have, and related to specialists as well. Thank you, Liudmyla. Sorry, Katarina, may I comment on that? I would like to highlight that the scalable interventions are not about techniques. It's about a program that works within the structure. I mean, the exercises, strategies. So it's like as if we make the necklace of the beads. We put one bead on the thread on top of the other one. If we shift something, there is no guarantee that it's gonna work. And we have from easy mode to difficult mode program. And of course, it's really impressive that you continue providing supervisions, because training is not enough. It's not easy just to train. You need to provide supervisions and support the specialists, because the quality of care is probably the most important thing, and the safety of the person who receives support. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hanna. Right now, let's answer Rebecca's question. And I can see that Hanna Mokrousova has joined us from an NGO Bluebird. Hanna, we will give you the floor, and we have one more speech of our international expert, Kurt Schmidt. So let's try to quickly answer Rebecca's question. Somehow we had no questions, and then closer to the end of the meeting, we have a lot of questions. Thank you so much, Rebecca. We will take this question into bilateral discussion. What do you say about case management? And this is a separate case management rather than is available in the social protection field. So let's take this question for a separate bilateral meeting and discussion, so that I'd give a chance to Hanna to say a word and to listen to the presentation. Thank you, Rebecca, for your question. Thank you, Hanna. And right now, colleagues, let's move on to the next speaker. We will give the floor to our international expert, Gerd Schmidt, and he represents ARC International, NGO to international organization, and he will tell us about ambiguous laws. This is the topic which includes a lot of Ukrainian international experience and different considerations. So we try to share different perspectives and opinions in this meeting. So, Gerd, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will also start sharing my screen. So thank you very much for the invitation, and impressive to hear what has been done and is also needed still. So I will go into a program. No, not a program, but two aspects of help that we developed specifically for people with ambiguous loss, with missing loved ones. One is more like a diagnostic tool or a screening tool for specific mental health complaints, and the other is a cognitive behavioral approach to individual support for people dealing with ambiguous loss. So it has already been said before by previous speakers that ambiguous loss involves a lot of specific, a very specific distress, a very severe distress, and is also associated with different stressors, such as indeed an ongoing threat, legal and financial problems, and sometimes also conflicts even between family members about, when they have different beliefs about what has happened. And there is a paradoxical dynamics of hope. Sometimes some studies actually have found that people who hold on to the hope that the loved one will return alive actually experience elevated distress. So holding on to this hope does not always lead to people feeling better. And there is indeed a need for support during the entire process of searching, including the reconnection with remains, or the reunion with remains, as was already mentioned before. So thinking about ambiguous loss from, let's say, a diagnostic point of view, there are important differences between symptoms related to post-traumatic stress, symptoms related to grief, and symptoms related to a loved one who went missing. And you see a summary of those differences here in this table. So the causal stressor is different. The reaction that really persists is different, and ambiguous loss is of course triggered by the disappearance of a loved one. There's a lot of uncertainty. People experience hope and despair. They have this strong urge to find answers, and there are even mental health diagnoses that are associated with these different kinds of stressors. So there's no specific diagnosis for ambiguous loss, but it can be coded as a mental health problem according to different diagnostic systems, such as the ICD-11 or the DSM-5 text revision. And so, ambiguous loss has different, it's a different clinical picture, I would say, comparing it to, for example, other disorders such as post-traumatic stress disorder and prolonged grief disorder. So therefore, it's important to be able to assess the impacts of ambiguous loss more specifically, and that's why Hannah Comtesse and her colleagues developed this Ambiguous Loss Inventory Plus, and this assesses both separation distress and more general psychological reactions to the disappearance. And this tool, the ALI Plus, is freely downloadable in currently 9 languages from this open science forum. You see the link here as well as a QR code. It's also available in Ukrainian. And there are some preliminary psychometric data that support its validity. We also, based on experiences in other countries, even in Mexico, where there are also many people who went missing, we reviewed some well, empirically supported interventions in ambiguous loss. And here you see an outline of the type of interventions that received some support. So it's about psychoeducation, about mobilizing social support. It is also about what is often called exposure, so really talking about what happened, what is the situation, who's missing, what were the circumstances of the person going missing. And it's also about a future orientation, so how to continue living with uncertainty. And from this basic structure, we developed this protocol, cognitive behavioral therapy-based support for ambiguous loss, CBT-AL. It includes 8 themes that can be addressed using at least 8 sessions. These would be typically individual sessions, but group sessions can also be considered. So the first session then includes introduction and psychoeducation about ambiguous loss. The second session involves information about providing and receiving social support, and preferably involves also a partner or another loved one or a friend who can then join the person who seeks help. Then sessions 3 and 4 are about exposure. So this is about really what happened and also what makes the loved one who went missing so special. Why is this relationship so important? Why does it hurt so much? What do people miss especially? This is all about very, let's say, intimate experiences, severe separation pain, and often also about anxiety and stress. So that is why it is called exposure. Then the 5th theme, and often the 5th session, involves behavioral activation, which is mainly about resuming activities, specifically activities that are pleasurable or that give meaning or satisfaction to a person. The 6th session is more specifically about adjusting mastery, and mastery is a concept that Pauline Bos has developed in the context of ambiguous loss. And it's about that people can either feel they need to control as much as possible everything they can do related to this situation of their missing person. So to regain control, but control is difficult when there's so much uncertainty. Other people can almost let go of any control and feel completely, let's say, passive, unable to regain any kind of control on any aspect of their ongoing lives. So it's how to balance these 2 extremes. That is adjusting mastery. Attribution of meaning focuses on what it really means when the person went missing, to when the loved one went missing, what this really means for the person, the way they look at themselves, at the world around, and indeed also at their future. And orientation to the future is then the final specific topic that is then addressed in session 8, or the concluding session. And you see here different goals that can be achieved using this approach. It's about dealing with uncertainty and ambiguity. It's also about making sense of the disappearance, of what happened. It's about dealing with emotional pain. It is about promoting helpful thoughts, strengthening social support. Reviewing the relationship with the missing person is also one of the therapy goals. orienting towards the future, making realistic plans, and finally, improving daily functioning. So this is all very brief, of course, but to sum up, so assessment of ambiguous loss is supported by the ALI Plus, a questionnaire, and CBT-AL uses evidence-informed CBT and also meaning-oriented interventions to support relatives of missing persons with ambiguous loss. It consists of at least 8 sessions, and translations of the protocol are available for free. So please let me know if you're interested, for example, using the email address. Thank you so much. Perhaps there are questions.
Дякую велике, Герте.
Thank you, Gert.
це також дуже корисний
Yes,
інструмент,
really, this is very helpful tool.
Дуже
And
важливо також, що
it's
ви
so
поділилися
important
цю
also
інформацією
that you
про
shared this
підходи.
information about the
Також,
follow-and
ми
approaches,
поділилися
and we
в
also
чаті посиланням
shared
на
a link
матеріали і
to
записали
all your
додаток,
materials in the
з
chat.
доступом
And
українською мовою. Тому
it's
дуже
important to know
прошу
that this tool is available in
поділитися цими
Ukrainian,
матеріалами,
so we
користуватися,
encourage colleagues to
переглядати,
share
бо,
these
як ви
materials,
зазначали,
use them,
дійсно,
look through
перегляд
them. As
інструментів, які ми
we
маємо для того,
said,
щоб
the
працювати
list of
з
tools to
ambiguous
work with
втратою,
ambiguous
завжди
loss has
достатньо.
to
У нас має
be
бути
sufficient.
достатньо
We
знань
have
і
to have
навичок,
enough
і
knowledge and
розуміння,
skills and
що може
understanding
застосовуватися.
about what
І,
can be
зокрема, також
applied.
хочу
And in
сказати,
particular, we
в
also
іноземний
heard
досвід
about the
і
foreign
про ті
international
інструменти, які
experience
пропонуються
and
нам
the tools
в
which are
закладі.
offered to us
Тому дякую.
from
Герте,
abroad.
зараз
So,
не бачу
Gert,
ніяких
thank you so
питань
much.
до
I see
вас,
no questions
але
for now,
важливо,
but
дякую, що ви
we
долучилися,
really want to
поділилися
thank you
своїм
for
досвідом.
joining us
Також
and
нагадую,
sharing
що у
your
нас
experience. Let me
проходив
remind you that
вебінар,
we
який також
had
є
a
транскриптом,
webinar.
і
Gert
який
also read
власне
that
ви
webinar,
також
and it
можете
was also
знаходити
organized by the technical working
доступний
group,
для
and it is
колег або
available
перегляд
for
якраз
colleagues.
актуально, де можна
You
більш
can
детально
watch it, and
ознайомитися з
in
цим
detail
інструментом.
you can
Тому, Герте, дякую,
look
що
through all
ви
these aspects and
підтримуєте
listen to
Україну
it.
і
Gert, thank you
підтримуємо
for
нашу технічну
support in
роботу
Ukraine and support in our
сьогодні.
technical working group in this discussion.
Ми
So,
дуже вдячні. Власне,
thank you
зараз
so much.
для
And
того, щоб
right now,
завершити нашу зустріч,
to
знаєте,
finish
ми
our
довго
meeting, I
працюємо
know
з вами,
that we go over time a
але
little
все ж
bit,
таки не можемо
but anyway,
пройти повз, скажімо
we
так, і
cannot bypass
проігнорувати
and ignore
також важливі доповіді, яка у нас була
an
запланована
important
від
speech which
громадської
was
організації «Блакитний птах».
planned
І зараз
from
хочу
an
надати
NGO,
слово пані Ганні для того,
Bluebird,
щоб також
Блакитний
поділитися
Птах,
досвідом
and I'd like to
організації.
give the
Власне,
floor to
пані
Hanna
Ганно,
for
ви
her
щойно
to share the
послухали
experience of
доповіді
the
і від
organization. Hanna,
Міністерства
we
внутрішніх справ
listened
і
to
докладів
the
з питань
speeches from the
агресивної
Ministry of
кібербезпеки.
Internal
І
Affairs,
від
from the
Координаційного центру стратегічної
Department
екології,
of
які також зазначали про
Missing
досвід
Persons,
співпраці
and
з
we
вами,
also
і про і від
heard
міжнародних
about
комітетів
Coordination
Червоного
Center
Хреста,
and
і щодо
ICRC,
інтервенцій
about
психологічних.
psychological
Чули
interventions.
також досвід.
We
Власне, у нас такий
heard
широкий
their
сьогодні
experience. So in
перелік
general, we have the
спікерів,
broad
але
list of
власне
speakers
хотіла
today, but I
попросити
also
розповісти нам про
would
досвід
like to
роботи
ask you to
вашої
share the
організації,
experience of
і
your
таким чином можемо
organization, and this
підсумовувати
way
нашу
we will
сьогоднішню зустріч.
sum up
Якщо є
this
якісь приклади
meeting
гарних
today. If
кейсів
there are
або
some
якісь такі
examples
пріоритети,
of
які
good
ви вбачаєте,
cases
це було б для
or
нас
some
дуже корисно.
priorities,
Тож
it
надаю
would
вам
be very
слово.
helpful. So over to you.
Бачу, що є якась проблема з інтернетом. Зараз пропоную
Probably
почекати.
there is an issue with the internet. Let's wait a few minutes.
Добрий день. Прошу
Hello.
вибачення.
I'm sorry.
Мене чути?
Can you hear me?
Так.
Я прошу вибачення, що сьогодні
I'm sorry that
форс-мажору.
I have a lot of force majeure situations today.
Я керівниця
Sorry for the technical issues. I'm the head of an NGO, Bluebird. Our organization has been working from 2014 and supporting the families of those who are missing and prisoners of war. Can you hear me well?
Ехо, да?
Так, ніби зараз має бути все нормально. Зараз виправили та
It
пані
seems
Ганна.
like everything should be better
Чула
now.
вас, зараз
Hanna,
має
we
бути
could
все
hear you, but now it should be better. Okay.
Я дуже,
So
знаєте, переживаю, що я запізнилась.
I'm really
бо
worried
тема
that
дійсно
I
дуже
came
актуальна.
late because this topic is so relevant, and I'm very sorry for being late. In 2014, when we faced the need to support these families in Ukraine, back then in Ukraine, there was no systematic accessible DNA expertise. There were 6 laboratories only. It was, terra incognita. And the particularity of support of these families in Ukraine, the families of missing persons, the particularity is that most of them hope that their family members are the prisoners of war. And here, speaking about working on the ambiguous laws is difficult. Understanding who we have the war with, our enemy, Russians give no access to the prisoners of war, and we know that they reburied the bodies from 2014, and it's not that easy even to get the access to the bodies. And all of this gives a chance for families to hope that their family members will return from captivity, and it really complicates our work in the support, acceptance, and in helping them to keep on living and have socially active life. In our work, for the first of all, it all depends on what stage the person came to us, but first of all, we help the person. Very often they come to us on the stage when they just got notified that their family member is missing. And here, when the person is emotional, our task is to be a cognitive component to help people process this information, to work with myths, and there are a lot of myths in this area, and to have unbiased attitude. Very often our specialists who support the person or the family member of the missing person, the law enforcement bodies, and in their emotional condition, the person may simply not be able to find contact with people around them and even those who can help them. At the same time, our task is to work on symptoms. It's very difficult for people to actually, in that condition that they are in that condition of active search and active fight, it's difficult to provide them with the support so that they would accept it. And it's true. We have 10-year experience. We've been helping them to start insomnia or the weight disbalance. It doesn't help them. It's not a helpful coping strategy. And our way is to build the bridge between the family member of the missing person and the social world. Then we gradually work on bothering symptoms like the weight fluctuation or insomnia and so on, so that the person would gradually be included into socially active life, and it's not related to the system of search and freeing the person from captivity. We have 2014, it's not the weekly support, of course, but anyway, they still are our clients, and from time to time they contact us and ask for support. And as of today, there are a lot of new challenges related to the full-scale invasion. And here we also provide the trainings, both trainings for the communities on how to support each other. We provide a lot of trainings for people working with these communities, a lot of trainings for social services, for healthcare workers. Our organization, since we've been working on this topic for 10 years in Ukraine, we provide interventions and supervisions for specialists working with families of missing persons and prisoners of war. I was trying to be brief. Thank you so much. Thank you, Hanna. To sum up, could you please tell us What one priority could you say in this area, not just in your organization, but all over Ukraine? What is the biggest priority problem that needs to be solved? You know, for myself, I can see the biggest priority is that we separate organizations. Right now in Ukraine, we have a lot of missing persons, thousands of thousands, and we understand that this problem will be here with us for many, many years in the future. It's not going to finish, even if today the war is over. So the main task is not about getting specialists. We have that, but it's about the creation of rituals. It's about working with the population of the population on how to support the families of missing persons, how to communicate, what are the support rituals in the communities, because actually in Ukraine we have great cases on different communities, because for families it's important to have the memory, and you know, some communities create the cards of commemoration of heroes. For the families it's supportive when the community knows and remembers their loved ones. So there is a lot of stigma about women, the wives of missing persons, how long the wife has to wait for her missing husband. And there is no understanding in the community how to cope with this expectation situation, when the woman has the right not to be judged by the community. And one more point, it's then again about the community in Ukraine. We have to work, you know, not narrowly, but we have to change the specifics of acceptance. There has to be the understanding how to support children in the families of missing persons and prisoners of war, because they are excluded from the system. If sometimes some psychologists work with them, it's only families understood that the children need to have the support from the psychologists, and if they could see the problems of children. Here we have to engage communities and create the support systems in the communities. I think these days we have the general problem to create in the state the support system on the societal public level. Thank you so much, Hanna. Really, this is a very important message. And finishing our meeting today, I would like to once again say that despite the fact that in Ukraine we are really implementing a lot of different tools, there are a lot of organizations working with unidentified loss. A lot of attention goes to this topic from the governmental sector, ministries, coordination sector. This topic, not just due to its scale, this topic is still really important. It's a priority point. Thank you, Hanna, that you highlighted that this is the social problem, that every community has to have a specific mechanism, approaches, people who understand how to cope with this problem, what needs to be done so that we would preserve our cohesion, so that we would not face even bigger challenges in the future, which will become the consequences of the fact that these days we didn't clearly respond to this problem. I can see that people ask for Hanna's contacts. Colleagues, we will share the contacts of all the speakers in the minutes of the meeting so that you'd have a chance to contact each other. So I want to thank everyone who joined this meeting. I want to thank you that you discussed this topic with us. Thank you that you join the response and that you join this work on this difficult topic, but I hope that the discussion today will help attract attention and continue working in this field. And we will consider other ways to strengthen capacity. Maybe we will actualize additional trainings to strengthen this work. So thank you, colleagues. Please take care of yourself and see you in 2 weeks.
наступному засіданні технічного
in
робочого
our
групи про
next meeting of the
інформацію
technical
брифінгу
working group in the briefing
Ну,
format,
і
where we
про
will
необхідність
listen
дуже
to
дякую
different
нашим
updates.
спікерам
I
за
want to
допит, за
thank our
приділений
speakers
час і за
for
готовність
their
говорити про цю тему.
speeches, for
Тому
the
дякуємо,
time you
бережіть
took
себе і
to speak
до
about
побачення.
this topic. Thank you, colleagues. Take care of
Дякую,
yourselves
до
and
побачення.
goodbye. Thank you. Goodbye.
Дякую, до побачення.